Hey, Facebook, it's Sergeant Dorsey Speaks live at 5 every Wednesday here on my Facebook page. So I'm going to, wow, there's so much to talk about today. Ooh, I got to just take a deep breath. I have just a plethora of things that I want to share with you, and I'll just wait a little bit and give everybody an opportunity to join in. I'm going to try and see if I can share this on another page as you guys come on. Hey Eugene, hey Desmond, Jerome, welcome. Welcome to Sergeant Dorsey Speaks and Live at 5. I appreciate you guys joining in and stopping by to see what it is that I have to say. You know, one of the things that I was going to talk about, and maybe I'll just go ahead and touch on it real quickly as I wait others to join in, because I want to touch base and update you on some things going on with the Dallas PD situation with Botham Jean and Amber Guyger, as well as what's trending right now in the news with Brett Kavanaugh and the upcoming hearing on tomorrow for the Supreme Court position. Hey, Christina. There's a third and now a fourth accuser with regards to Brett Kavanaugh. And so one of the things that I kind of just wanted to touch on, and we could talk about this ad nauseum if I'm not careful, is, you know, what's going on with women and why they wait so long to report. Kind of dovetails on the whole Bill Cosby situation. I know there's angst on both sides of that agenda item, if you will. People who feel like he's being dealt a disservice due to his age and his illness, if you will, blindness. And then there's the side of the victim, women who have been victimized by Bill Cosby. And so I'm sympathetic. You know, he's an old man, but I also know what it is to be a victim of abuse. And I understand why women don't report. And so while I've been the victim of abuse, it wasn't sexual abuse, it was just abuse of power. And when you speak out and you report, there's a consequence to pay. I learned that very early on in my career on the LAPD because I was a young police officer, not yet vested, which means I could be easily fired. And, you know, I was in a male-dominated organization where men were coming up and saying the most outrageous of things to me as a young female, fresh meat, if you will, on the LAPD. And so back then, you just had to suck it up. You just had to turtle up and get over it. And so that's why women don't speak up, because there's a price to pay. And I'm sure everybody on here probably can relate to that in some form or another on your job. If you speak up, whether you're male or female, if you speak up and speak out against a supervisor, there's a price to pay because they have the power. And so, you know, if that's how you sustain yourself, if that's how you sustain yourself and take care of your family, are you really going to jeopardize your job by speaking out about something? Are you going to pick and choose your battles? Because that's generally what it boils down to, is picking and choosing my battles. Do I want to fight about everything, or do I want to let this one ride? And so I think the fact that this female is going to be testifying tomorrow, Dr. Ford is going to be testifying tomorrow under the penalty of perjury, should speak volumes to anyone who doubts the veracity of her claim. They seem to be hiding Brett Kavanaugh's buddy, Mark Judge. They're trying to rush through this confirmation hearing because I believe the fear is that more people are going to come forward with things that may not necessarily be criminal, but certainly would be a disqualifier for a job. And so brings me to another topic that we should have this conversation with our young people, is be mindful of the things you do when you're young, because you never know when what you do could come back to bite you, could come back to be an eliminator, a disqualifier for a job that you don't even know you might want to do at 15, 16, 17. And that's kind of what's going on right now. So I'm going to start in the state of Texas, and understand I don't live in Texas, I'm in California. But I am in communication with people that are on the ground there, and I hear a lot about what's going on in Texas. And so there's some things that are going on that I think are kind of a big deal, and maybe you do know about it, maybe you don't. But I want to talk a little bit about it. And one of the things that I want to talk about is there is a mother of three by the name of Crystal Mason. And Crystal Mason will on tomorrow start serving a 5-year state prison term. And I don't know if it's concurrent, which means at the same time, or if it will be following her state prison term, but she has a 10-month federal prison term that she must also serve. And what happened with Crystal Mason, I'll just give you the Reader's Digest version real quick. What happened with Crystal Mason is that she had been convicted and did 5 years previously for some kind of tax fraud. She had a tax business and she was doing something that wasn't quite kosher with her clients, and she was found guilty of that. She went to prison. She did 5 years. She got out and she was on supervised release. While she was supervised release in 2016, she attempted to vote. She went to her local voting station and her name was not on the roster, and so she had to file a provisional ballot. She filed a provisional ballot, and unbeknownst to her, while felons can vote in the state of Texas, if you're under supervised probation, which is what she was, supervised release, you can't vote. And she didn't know that, and she did. And so now she is facing 5 years in state prison. She's got to turn herself in on tomorrow. So for anybody who lives in the state of Texas, if you are so inclined and you would like to reach out and support this mother of three who may very well lose everything in the 5 years that she's going to be away, attorney Kim T. Cole is representing her there in Dallas. And if you would like to reach out to support Crystal Mason, do so by contacting attorney Kim T. Cole. And the reason that all of this was possible, I'm told, is because this happened in Tarrant County. And for those of you who live in Texas, that should have some significance, because I'm told that Tarrant County is problematic for people of color, even though it's a minority majority area. There's a lot of complacency in terms of voters, and folks are just not paying attention to what's going on there in that county. And some of you who don't live in Texas may remember the young teen who was found not guilty when he was involved in a vehicular manslaughter case where 4 people died, and they said that, you know, he had affluenza. He just had so much money growing up that he didn't know the difference between right and wrong, and that was okay, and he was able to get away with it. That happened in Tarrant County. Also in Tarrant County, I'm told that there was a judge who was forging signatures on a ballot to get his name on a ballot, and he didn't get any jail time. Also in Tarrant County, I'm told that there was a district attorney who was soliciting funds from her employees in Tarrant County during an election, which is a violation of some sort. Hello, Mark and Jerome. Hey, this DA was soliciting funds using her department government computer, which is a violation, some kind of a crime. And again, no jail time. No jail time for the affluenza teen. No jail time for the judge who was forging names to get his name on a ballot. No jail time for the district attorney in Tarrant County who was soliciting funds. But they are sending this woman, Crystal Mason, to state prison for 5 years for voting. So you understand that this is an election year, and I say make your vote be your protest. If you don't like what's going on there in Dallas and other places, you need to make sure that you are registered and ready to go come November. So that's my first thing that I wanted to share with you. And then the next thing that I want to do is give you a little update, because there's a trial going on right now in Chicago involving the shooting death by a Chicago police officer of Laquan McDonald. You know that story. It's been a couple of years. Right now, the superintendent, Eddie Johnson, has finally, after 2 years, decided to look into the complaint and possibility of firing the officers, 7 officers who were connected to that shooting death of Laquan McDonald, because now it's been found and proven, I imagine, that these 7 officers lied about the circumstances that led up to the shooting of Mr. McDonald. And so Superintendent Eddie Johnson, 2 years after the fact, is now going to fire the officers that were involved on the peripheral. the main shooter is in trial right now, and I believe the defense is putting on their case right now. So I'll continue to monitor this trial for the officer responsible for the shooting death of Laquan McDonald in Chicago, and I'll report back to you when I know a little bit more about that. And so while we're talking about police issues, I want to talk a little bit about police misconduct and reporting it, and this is kind of going to segue into the whole Amber Guyger situation, which is something that I want to share with you and talk to you about. Hey, Derek, I see you. Glad you were able to get on. Thanks, I appreciate that. Hey, John, how are you? Good evening. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate you guys for coming on. And if you didn't know, yesterday, my podcast, Sergeant Dorsey Speaks, dropped. And that's going to be a weekly event. Every Tuesday, new content will drop on my podcast. And you can find it on whichever platform you like, Spotify, Speaker, Stitcher, iTunes, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, and very soon I should be up on iHeartRadio. So I'm really excited about that as well. So this whole thing with police misconduct, here in California, there's a Senate bill, 1421, that's going to the governor. And 1421 here in California is going to allow for more transparency, more openness with regards to misconduct when you do file a complaint against a police officer. Right now, you know, police unions fight mightily to keep the names of officers a secret when they're involved in some kind of deadly force incident or excessive use of force incident. That information is shielded from the community. And so there's an effort afoot here to find out more information about police misconduct complaints, internal affairs investigations. And the reason that that's such a big deal is because there are 3 agencies here in California that are notorious in terms of sustaining an allegation of misconduct when it's presented. And I'm just going to give you some statistics. Here in LA, on the LAPD, there's a 1% of internal affairs complaints are upheld. So 15,661 complaints were filed, and I believe that's in the last year. And of those 15,000, 69 were found to be true by the Internal Affairs Division. For LA County Sheriff's Department, there were over 25,000 reported allegations of police misconduct, and 5.4% of those were upheld. In other words, 1,300 of 25,000 police complaints were upheld. And in the city of Oakland, another big police department where there are a lot of complaints, 16,000 police complaints and only 1,000 were upheld. You know, I tell people all the time, if you have a grievance with the police department, it's important to file a complaint because you need to help establish a pattern of bad behavior. When we had a Justice Department that was interested in investigating civil rights violations, one of the things that they look for, the threshold is very hard to overcome, is that pattern of practice. And here in California, police departments kind of have some say about what they want to report to DOJ in terms of complaints. And I'm not sure what's going to happen in this legislation that will cause them to do something different in terms of compelling police chiefs to report everything. They can make a determination based on however they categorize personnel complaints about whether or not it meets the threshold to be even reported to DOJ. And so you understand, if DOJ is not getting information timely and correctly, then what they come out with at the end in terms of complaints received and complaints sustained is going to be very different from probably what's really going on. I know here in LA, a spokesperson said that our complaints were down on the LAPD, and I don't know if that means that they were down because LAPD is doing a better job, or our complaints down on the LAPD is because people are just fed up and feel like nothing is going to happen. And so why would I bother to file a complaint if the police are not going to do anything? And isn't that what we think anyway? Isn't that kind of what we feel when we file a complaint? Isn't that what we see when we have a death, as in the case of Botham Jean, that the police, circle the wagons and rally around one another? and try to minimize and mitigate that bad behavior. Here, in 2016, there was a young woman in Oakland PD who had filed a complaint against several officers alleging that they had been having sex with her when she was underage. And she was said, when she made this complaint, that she was made to feel that Internal Affairs was really uninterested in her complaint. But she got an attorney and she stayed with it. And eventually there was a big scandal in Oakland, and there were several officers who were ultimately fired and prosecuted. And so be tenacious, be deliberate, be specific when you make these complaints. It's not easy sometimes to overcome the pushback that you get. And I don't know if you guys saw this, but a few months ago, there was a video going around, and this was a white guy who was going into various police departments to file a complaint. And while it wasn't funny, it was kind of funny, because he would go in there to file a complaint about something, and the next thing you know, the sergeant on duty, is chasing him out of the station and asking him for his ID and threatening him with arrest. And this was a white guy. So we understand what happens when we come into a police station and try to file a complaint. And so I tell people, don't waste your time going to a police station. Write a letter. Write a letter and CC the police chief, the mayor. If you have an independent civilian review board, CC them. And one thing I know is that police departments don't like paper. And while they can minimize and dismiss a telephone call or a station visit, something will happen if you start putting pen to paper. So don't be discouraged. If it was easy, everybody would do it. And part of that is to discourage you. Part of that is to frighten you and have you think that bad things will happen if you come back in here trying to file a police report. So don't be deterred. Also, in police news, in Bergen County Sheriff, the actual sheriff, by the name of Michael Saldino, was overheard making racist remarks on an audio. I don't know where he was when he made it, but he was somewhere overheard, and it got the attention of the governor there. I believe this is in New Jersey. The governor, Phil Murphy, has asked Sheriff Sardino to resign. And so I'm wondering, Governor, why are you asking him to resign? Why don't you just fire him? Why give him the gift of resignation and allow him to go on and do something else now that he's shown us who he is? And I always say that, this racism that I believe is institutional on police departments, not all of them, but, let's not pretend it doesn't exist. It's top down. I say it all the time. When you have the sheriff, who feels some kind of way about people of color, then you understand why his officers feel the same way, right? It's kind of a duplicating kind of thing. And every sheriff, like every police chief, was once a fledgling officer, was once a deputy. And so when, they get on TV and clutch their pearls and act like they're surprised, hey, Mama Lindy, act like they're surprised by something that their officers are doing, then they're being intellectually dishonest. And so not sure what's going to happen in Bergen County with Sheriff Michael Sardino, but the governor says, in my too short voice, it's time to go. Okay, now we know that Amber Guyger allegedly entered the wrong apartment, right? This is not the first time that that's happened. Much like uses of force, deadly force, we know that these things go on. We just, for whatever reason, start to hear more about it and see more about it. And so there was a situation, and I'm wondering now if this new buzzword that we're going to hear is that officers were acting on a tip. Remember back in the day when I was a young officer, it was, I couldn't see his hands. He was reaching for something in his waistband. And then it became, I'm in fear for my safety. So now there's this thing going on that officers are acting on a tip. They got a tip about something and they're acting on it. And so, if they just happen to kill somebody in the process, my bad. Ollie oxen free. I was acting on a tip. Evidently, there were two officers in Prince George County just a few days ago, September 19th. Two officers acting on a tip had received information about some drug activity at a house, and they went to the house. They got a search warrant, and they went to the house acting on this tip. And unlike Mr. Jean, the guy who lived there had a shotgun. And so this officer fired a couple of rounds and shot the two officers. The officers were not, they were injured, but they weren't gravely injured. But they did get shot by the shotgun. Now, I'm not advocating that because, listen, if you produce a shotgun and the police are coming in your house, that could be a whole nother situation. So I'm not advocating that. But here's another example. Right after the situation with Amber Guyger going into the wrong apartment, you have officers acting on a tip, are in the wrong place because the tip was bad. And this guy was having none of that, so he pulled out his shotgun. He was there with his young daughters, pulled out his shotgun, and shot back. So they're investigating this to try to find out what it is that they're going to do. Now, I'm thinking that this will probably wind up being justified, and the reason that I say that is because, you know, I'm not trusting of these police chiefs. And there's an example again of an older man. This guy was 63, and this was in 2016. He was 63 years old, and he thought he heard burglars coming into his home. And this happened, trying to see where this happened, Henry County. I'm not really sure where that is in Henry County. But this older gentleman, 63 years old, heard what he thought were burglars. He went, armed himself, went to his garage, and maybe the mistake that he made was that he raised his garage door. When he raised his garage door, the officers then see him, shoot him, and kill him. And grand jury found that shooting justifiable. So I'm not advocating that if the police show up at your house wrongly, that you grab a shotgun and take matters into your own hand, because we have an example of one gentleman did it, shot two officers. Now, I don't know what's going to happen to him. I don't know if they're going to try to turn the table on him some kind of way, but he survived. And then we have another gentleman who did not survive. And so, you know, that brings me to Ms. Guyger. Now, I don't know if this thing is going to make it to a grand jury. I don't know if there's going to be a court trial, but we are certainly going to have court of public opinion here with the Warrior Queen. I'm calling this the Warrior Queen's Court because there is so much foolishness going on relative to this Amber Guyger thing. It's hard for me to keep track. Now, you understand and remember, on Friday of last week, Chief Rene Hall said that she was prohibited from doing anything in terms of firing Amber Guyger because she had to wait until the criminal prosecution was complete, or the criminal investigation was complete. And so on Friday, she said that her hands were tied and she didn't want to run the risk of interfering or interjecting herself into that whole prosecution piece of it, and could not do anything. Well, come Monday, because of intense pressure, I guess, from protesters, guess what? She fired her. Now, I know they didn't conduct an internal affairs investigation over the weekend, and I'm certain that the criminal prosecution wasn't completed over the weekend, but she figured out a way. She called her in and asked her, had she been arrested for manslaughter? And when Amber said yes, that was some kind of an action that violated their policies, and was that admission then made it possible for Chief Hall to go ahead and fire Amber, because she had admitted that she had been arrested, as if Chief Hall didn't know she had been arrested. But anyway, she admitted that she had been arrested for manslaughter. So that's how she was able to fire her. Now, you know, I have issue with that whole master key thing that I keep talking about and making a big deal about. And, you know, I've alluded to the fact. Now, this is just what I think. This is not what I know. This is just what I think based on, you know, me, who I am, and what I do, right? The possibility that Amber Guyger was working off-duty security at the complex is something that I just can't let go of. And I keep talking about it because I'm hopeful that the family might hear my words, or the attorney representing the family might hear my words and might ask some questions about this. And so I'm going to share something with you. And what I'm going to share with you is something that you can Google. I don't want you to be sheeple. I don't want you to just take everything that I say as gospel. So you can Google this. I went so far as to put this on my phone because I don't know how long it's going to be out there on the internet, but the Dallas Morning News has an article with regards to the night of the shooting. And in that article, there is a 911 call being made. And you hear the transmission between dispatch and the rescue ambulance, firefighters, paramedics, whoever it was that was going to the shooting by Amber Guyger. And in this 911 call, you hear the dispatcher advising the responding units, the responding help, medical help, that the security guard is the one making the phone call, and the security guard is the one who was involved in the shooting. Which takes me back to, so did Amber keep her uniform on? Was that something she did routinely when she got off work, or did she keep her uniform on that night because she was pretending to be on duty, looking like she's on duty when she's really off duty, because she's going there with her little 5'3", 89-pound badass police officer self to deal with this tenant that she either had history with or had received some information about from earlier in the day. And because she's on-site security, she was going to go there and deal with this person. And I think, maybe it just went terribly wrong. And after it went terribly wrong, then she had to come up with something. And that's why the story keeps changing. I went to the wrong door. I thought I was at my place. I'm not at my place. I'm security. I'm not security. The other thing that's interesting about this, again, Google it and find it. I believe it's channel 8. That's ABC there in Dallas. And there's a reporter by the name of Rebecca Ramirez, I believe is her name. She too has a very interesting audio clip that goes with her story. And in her audio clip, she says that she received information from someone within the police department who wasn't able to speak on the record, said anonymously, that when the first responding police units arrived, they saw Amber's key still in the door. What the what? Her key was in the door, and I don't know, there's something about a key fob, you wave it, you stick your key in, I don't know what all that is, but I'm back to that master key. If she had a key that gave her access to everyone's unit, and the first units on the scene, the first police officer units, said that they saw Amber's key still in the door when they got there, to me, that's a problem. So I am going to play for you this audio, and I want you to listen. I hope you can hear it. I'm going to see if I can do this.
Rescue 6, there was a gunshot by security with the patient. So go ahead and stand by. Rescue 4, we now have you assigned to a gunshot. Security guard just shot the patient, so go ahead and stand by. 125 with code 6, where is you at?
They're saying apartment 1478. Need descriptions. 143, repeat the last. Fourth floor, apartment 1478.
So that was the audio, the dispatch 911, and you can clearly hear if you heard that, and I hope it was loud enough for you to hear. But you heard them say that it was a security guard that was involved in this shooting. The next audio that I'm going to play for you, and please go find it, don't be sheeple. Don't take my word for it. I'm not just, pulling stuff out of my nether regions when I tell you stuff. I try to be as accurate as I can, and I try to do my due diligence and see if it's reported in several different places before I put it out there. So this is what I was sharing with you about this Channel 8 ABC reporter, Rebecca Ramirez. This is the audio of her report.
Rescue 6, there was a gunshot by security.
Okay, that's not it. Sorry about that. Let me back up and.
Captures video of Guyger's key still in the door as she pushes it open to show them where Jean's body was. He was found about 12 to 15 feet away from the front door.
Okay, so you heard a little bit of what Rebecca Ramirez, KABC 8, said, that the first responding unit's officers' body cam showed Officer Guyger's key still in the door when they first arrived. So, yeah, John, she was off duty playing security. Absolutely, is what I think as well. And then once that thing went terribly wrong, I mean, you imagine you're sitting in your place eating a bowl of cereal, you just got off work or whatever you did, and your door opens late night, and maybe there were some words exchanged. That's the thing that we'll never know, right? I don't know how many of you saw my interview that I did on Now This News that I had put up on my page. But, I say all the time, when stuff goes sideways and police do something they don't have no business doing and they kill you, there's only one version, theirs. And that's the version that everybody wants to put forth, and that's the version that, folks want to act like happened, because great deference is given to what a police officer say. We saw that with Michael Schlager when he shot and killed Walter Scott, when he pumped those 8 rounds in his back. He had some crazy story to try to justify that thing that should have never happened but for that cell phone video. And so here we have Amber Guyger saying something that don't make no doggone sense. She went into the wrong apartment. She went into her apartment. She saw a burglar. Listen, that was not a burglar. She committed a home invasion is what she did. She invaded that man's property. And when he stood up and maybe questioned her, maybe said something to her, maybe they've had words before, because allegedly she lives 1 floor down from him, and there's rumors of a noise complaint. Some say there was a noise complaint. Others say there wasn't a noise complaint filed against him by her. I don't really know. But these are all questions that, need to be asked and answered. And I also saw something on social media that I want to share with you. There was an attorney there in Dallas. I believe her name is Amber something or other. Someone shared it with me, and she's an attorney, and she talked about the fact that protesters need to be very careful about how they protest and what they say, and the reason that you want to be mindful of that is because you don't want to create a situation where Amber's attorney is going to ask for a change of venue because they can't get a fair trial because of all the emotion surrounding Dallas County. And I thought all along that was why she went and turned herself in where she turned herself in Kaufman County, which I'm told is predominantly white. And if this thing gets changed and moved over to Kaufman County for a trial, if it makes it to that, then of course the jury is going to be much more sympathetic to 5'3", 89-pound Amber Guyger, who was confronted by a man in her apartment. So the questions that I'm asking for those of you who are there in Dallas, you might want to call Sister Girl Rene Hall and ask her. Now, I know that she passed this off to the Texas State Rangers, and how convenient that was, because she talked about transparency. And now we know that when you talk to the Texas Rangers, or when the media tries to talk to them, what they say is, I can't talk about it because it's being handled by the district attorney. And I'm also told that the person that heads up the Texas State Rangers now is a black guy. So you got Black Chief Rene Hall, if this is true. You got a Black Texas Ranger, if that's true. We know Rene Hall is the chief of Dallas. Black guy heading up the Texas State Ranger. And guess what? The DA, Faith Johnson, I believe is her name. Black woman, all black. So when this thing, don't go like we know it should go, and that she's not prosecuted and convicted, nobody can claim that, it was because of anything, because everybody that's involved is black. I just find that very convenient. I find that very unsettling. And everything that I've heard out of the mouth of Chief Rene Hall right now just sounds very disingenuous to me with regards to how this thing is being handled, and why she does things and then why she doesn't do other things. So Dallas, I say it all the time, let your vote be your protest. I'm understanding that the DA, Faith, is up for re-election in November, so she don't have a whole lot of time to get this thing right. And if she doesn't get it right and she doesn't figure it out between now and election time, then you guys know what's up. Just looking at my notes, because there was so much that I wanted to talk about with that whole Amber Hall thing, but I can't let it go. I mean, this is not many incidents that really touch me, that I'm really bothered by. But this one bothers me. I saw the funeral service that the family had a couple of days ago. They took Botham Jean back to St. Lucia, and that is his final resting place. And it was just very emotional to see his father talk about the last conversation that he had with his son, to see his little brother pay tribute to his big brother by singing a song as the recessional, as the family and other people who were attending the services were leaving the church where the services were held, because that was something that his little brother said Botham had always tried to encourage him to do, was to sing. Even if he didn't have a nice voice, he told him it was your duty to sing. And so he sang one final time to his brother. And one of the things that one of the people said there during the service was stand up for Botham. And so I am hashtagging that, and I'd like for those of you that are here with me who feel the way that I do, hashtag stand up for Botham. We're not going to let this thing get swept under the rug, if you will, because there's another thing that's coming. It always is. And so we need to stand up for Botham. We need to stand up for his family. They've got a lot that they're dealing with, and the reason that I keep talking about this and harping about this key and her being off duty, pretending to be on duty, is because that might be something that might get missed by the family. I see it and think about it one way as a police officer, much like this attorney there is viewing this and thinking and coming up with opinions based on her legal background, her expertise as an attorney, and why it's important for people there in Dallas to be strategic and not give them a reason to want to do a change of venue. And so as a police officer, as a police supervisor, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, I believe, my gut never lets me down, and I'm just firmly believing that Amber Guyger probably perpetrates when she's off duty on the regular. She's a little bitty thing, and I don't know her, but I know people like her, and I know that, some girls, they think they're, Jane Wayne is the term that we used to use on the LAPD. And so, when you put that uniform on, all of a sudden you get real tall and you get real bad ass until you take it off, right? So she's off duty and she's masquerading around in uniform. And remember, her vest got left in the apartment because that was one of the things that they recovered with the search warrant. And how did she get out of her vest? Was she taking her clothes off in there? I mean, it's just so much about that bothers me. Christina, the reason that they searched his apartment is because it was a crime scene. I mean, yeah, it was a scene. I mean, they made it a crime scene because they said there was marijuana in there, but it was a scene of a shooting. And so that's not uncommon. That doesn't bother me that they searched his apartment, and there's been no report of a search warrant issued for hers, but she could give permission. So they wouldn't necessarily need a search warrant for her apartment, but they would need a search warrant if they wanted to take anything that they wanted to use in a court later. They'd be prohibited from using it if they didn't have a search warrant to legally obtain it and remove it. And so that was the purpose for them. And listen, for as long as they were in there, and everybody that was in there, who knows, what was bought in and what was left behind. I don't even know. I mean, it was almost like it was contaminated as far as I'm concerned. I know that they did a freeze frame. They had some officers stand by while they went out and got this search warrant and came back and looked for whatever it was that they were looking for, or, for whatever it was they wanted to find. It's hard to trust that whole process. But I want you, you that are there in Dallas, and you that hear my voice, to join me and stand up for Botham, stand up for his family. They're dealing with a lot, and this has been going to be going on for a while. This will probably be going on for a couple of years, and who knows how many more deadly police shootings will happen between now and then. I'm hoping that since Amber Guyger was fired rather than resigned, and I hope they're not wordsmithing with us that she wasn't allowed to resign. I'm hoping that she really was fired, because if she was allowed to resign, then she could do a Betty Shelby and go get on another police department somewhere, and she could wind up teaching people how to get away with murder. But things to pay attention to, things to watch for. And remember, District Attorney Faith Johnson up for re-election in the November midterm. So pay attention to that. Also, I wanted to tell you and remind you that there is a very close Senate race going on right there in Texas. Senator Ted Cruz and Beto O'Rourke, as well as the Senate race in Nevada. For those of you who live in the state of Nevada, October 22nd is the absolute last day to register to vote if you want to be involved in this midterm election. So make sure that you do that. So thank you so much for everybody who stopped by and was interested in what it is that I had to say. Mama Linda, you want to know when are they going to get the results concerning drugs and liquor? I don't know. I don't know how long it takes for a toxicology report to come back. But, my guess is if she was under the influence, do you think we'll know? I mean, really? If that marijuana was hers, do you think we'll know? Really? Because I don't need a toxicology report. I'm not believing much of what is going to be shared with us with regards to that. So thank you again for stopping by. For those of you who are new to Sergeant Dorsey Speaks, I want to say welcome. I know I have a lot of new followers based on my Now This interview that dropped last week. So thank you. Continue to subscribe and follow me here on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey. My YouTube channel is called Black and Blue News, or you can just Google Cheryl Dorsey LAPD and find me on YouTube that way. Also, my website, www.sgtcheryldorsey.com. And for those of you who have a real interest and want to know more about my experience on the LAPD, what it is I advocate for, and how I got to do this thing that I do, I've written an autobiography that speaks to that, Black and Blue, The Creation of a Social Advocate, which is available on Amazon. And if you would like to have a signed, autographed copy of my autobiography, you can order it through my website, and I will respond to you, and I will get you out an autographed copy of Black and Blue, The Creation of a Social Advocate. So thank you so much for stopping by. Every Tuesday, Sergeant Dorsey Speaks will drop on podcast platform that you subscribe to. Please follow me there. And every Wednesday, I will come here and share with you and talk with you about the things that have been occurring. It'll be some police stuff, and it'll be, maybe some non-police stuff, because I got an opinion about everything, right? Hey, Barry, I see you. Wanted to talk a little bit more about that Kavanaugh-Cosby thing, but the takeaway for me with Bill Cosby was that people are all upset because this man got 3 years for rape, when there's a Black woman who's going to prison for 5 years because she voted. Understand that. Until next week, be good and be safe. Bye-bye.